welcome to our weekly look at events inside Syria. I'm Hazem Seeker. A UN ceasefire plan to stop the violence in the country is now into its 6th week. And with daily reports of further bloodshed, there is little sign that plan is working. The images from the town of Houla are a sobering reminder of just how far Syria is from any peaceful path out of the 14-month-old uprising against President Bashar al-Assad. The reports of the carnage, which could not be confirmed independently, say more than 90 people were killed there. And among the dead, at least 25 are women and children. Their families have said they won't bury them until UN observers witness what they have called a massacre. Rosalind Jordan has this report now, and we want to warn you some of the images you're about to see are disturbing.
It's the latest flashpoint inside Syria, and the results are grim. Hours after anti-government rallies in the town of Houla in Homs province, women and children bludgeoned, shot, and hacked to death. Activists accuse supporters of the government of Bashar al-Assad of carrying out a massacre. They say the killers are sending a message to the opposition: surrender or else. The Syrian National Council has demanded an urgent meeting of the UN Security Council. It blames the massacre not on government supporters acting on their own, but instead on government troops carrying out orders.
All of Homs came under fire today. This is the systematic policy by the regime to crush the will of the Syrian people. As the revolution grows, the more violence is used by the regime. This is not new to us. It is not the first massacre perpetrated by the regime, where half of the victims are women and children and whole families.
Syrian state television showed footage of what it says were residents killed by terrorists in Houla. Family members of those killed refused to bury their loved ones until UN observers saw their bodies, the same observers who were supposed to stop this kind of killing. Other activists say that nearly halfway through the UN-brokered ceasefire, the monitor's presence doesn't matter.
The mission has failed, utterly failed. The observers are moving, however, the security forces are dodging and moving around. Whenever they turn their back, they start shelling us.
All these people know is that for now, the world is watching and not doing much more. Rosalind Jordan for Inside Syria.
Well, before we get to our discussion, let's take a look at what's happened since that peace plan came into effect. On March 27th, Syria agreed to accept Kofi Annan's 6-point plan, which includes a commitment to work to address the legitimate concerns of the Syrian people, end the violence, and send its soldiers back to their barracks. But by April 10th, Syria had failed to meet the deadline to withdraw its troops from residential areas. And although a ceasefire was meant to come into effect on April 12th, the violence continued. On April 27th, a suicide bomber in Damascus killed at least 11 worshippers, leaving Friday prayers. The Syrian government blamed what they called terrorist groups. And earlier this month, 55 people were killed in a pair of explosions near an intelligence compound in Damascus. Well, the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has confirmed for now there is no backup plan for stopping the fighting in Syria. He said at this time we don't have any plan B. The Joint Special Envoy Kofi Annan has proposed 6 peace proposals, among which the complete cessation of violence is number 1. He went on to say, unfortunately, this has not been implemented, while with the deployment of monitoring missions, we have seen some dampening effect. So, for more on this, I'm joined by our 3 guests. In Philadelphia, we have Aqil Hashim, a former brigadier general in the Syrian army. In Barcelona, Alan George, a professor at St. Anthony's College at Oxford University. Alan has also written a book called Syria, Neither Bread Nor Freedom. And in London, we have Ammar Waqaf, a member of the Syrian Social Club, a group that advocates reform and not regime change in Syria. Good to have you all with us. Brigadier General Aqil Hashim, if I could start with you. First of all, your reaction to these reports of a massacre in the town of Houla, because from what we've just seen, no evidence really that this plan is working.
Yes, this awful incident which happened yesterday in Al-Houla, which is a small town near Homs. This is another proof and another indication among hundreds or maybe thousands. What we said like 6-7 months ago, that this regime will not stop killing people, destroying homes and properties forever and ever, unless some superior power to him which is the job or the duty of the international community, to stop him of continuing this massacre, this genocide, this atrocity in Syria. This is the most important thing, that this regime will stop killing people forever and ever. And on the other hand, there is a people who will never ever stop fighting this regime. The Syrian people has decided to revolt against this regime. And this is the big proof that after this massacre, Syrian now, all over Syria, there is demonstration demanding the international community to intervene militarily in Syria. Means this horrible incident didn't stop the Syrian people from fighting this regime. We have a stalling situation. A regime will still continue to kill people, and a people will continue to fight this regime, and this must be stopped, because every day we lose lives and we lose people, we lose a lot of things. So the international committee, we don't ask the international committee to intervene. We don't beg him to intervene. We tell the international committee that this is your job, this is your duty, and you cannot turn your face forever away from what's happening in Syria.
Omar Wakaf, I know you probably want to respond to what the Brigadier General has just said, but I also want to ask you, the fact that the violence has continued despite the deployment of those 250 UN observers who have fanned out across the country to monitor the ceasefire, isn't it clear at this point that the plan isn't working, and what options are left?
Well, I'll come to your question first. Obviously, I would say the plan isn't working as it should. That doesn't mean that it isn't working. I would look at the monitors on the ground really not as a force to monitor ceasefire, but as a force to really establish what is really happening on the ground, because there are a lot of conflicting reports that are coming in the international media about Syria, and probably the decision makers in the United Nations would want somebody who is entrusted or who is trusted, who can be trusted on the ground to tell them exactly what is happening. Now, the plan, why is it not working? Because there are certain regional parties who are really not interested in the plan working. They've said so from the very beginning. Since the plan was announced, there are certain countries who said that, oh, we are going to continue to arm the Syrian opposition. And if we remember the plan clearly says that all the commitments basically that are to be sought from the Syrian government or provided by the Syrian government are also to be sought by the other parties, the opposition and all the relevant parties at the same time. Now, the problem is that neither the relevant parties are going to give you such guarantees. Actually, they're saying exactly the opposite. We're going to continue arming the opposition. And B, which is most importantly, the organization on the ground of the armed groups is not really coherent. They don't follow a strict command and control structure. So probably nobody can control those people. Now, going back to the issue or to the myth that the Syrian people are all up in arms against the government, I can assure you that when the new constitution was voted a couple of months back, more than half of the population went on to vote for the constitution. When the parliamentary elections took place a few weeks back as well, a couple of weeks back, more than half of the population again went on to vote in that process. And that tells you that more than half of the Syrian population are willing to engage in the new political framework that has been brought forward by the current government. With regards to the massacre today in Houla, there is something that the people would really need to understand here, is that whenever there is a sort of a milestone with regards to the Syrian issue, we hear about this huge massacre that has taken place. We've seen that before. Huge massacres took place coinciding with a United Nations Security Council meeting on Syria. And it's not surprising at all to see that before the visit of Kofi Annan tomorrow, there's something similar happening. But the Syrian television, against all odds, they are showing now unedited films.
I just want to pick up on
happened.
what you just said. Are you suggesting that the discovery of this massacre in Houla was timed to coincide with the visit of Kofi Annan?
That is exactly what I'm saying. I can give you example after example.
What evidence do you have of that?
Well, there isn't any evidence, is there? The only evidence we have is that whenever the Security Council, whenever the international community has a step towards Syria, there is a huge massacre that takes place. Now, there is a clear trend towards that. When in February the 4th and 5th, the Security Council was discussing Syria, a huge massacre supposedly took place in Homs. And we've seen the pictures of the victims about their hands and feet were tied. And that told you immediately that there were more, hostages killed in cold blood rather than people who were killed by army shelling. In a sense, what Syrian television now is showing in a series of episodes over the past few weeks is that there are unedited videos about what really took place in Homs, and the unedited videos tell you a completely different story than the videos that were shown on YouTube. You know, the 30 or 40-second videos that were shown on YouTube, apparently they are part of about like 8 or 9 minute videos that tell you a completely different story and tell you that a lot of what we have seen outside Syria is actually very much fabricated.
I want to get Alan George's view on this now, and I want to ask you, was this plan ever likely to succeed from the beginning?
No, I think it was very difficult to be optimistic about it. In a sense, one already saw how this Syrian regime responds to peace plans, because the Arab League had a peace plan and sent monitors last autumn. And actually, they were treated in much the same way as the regime is treating the UN observers. So I don't really think it had any chance. The reason I say that is that, frankly, I agree completely with the general. This is a regime that has never been in the business of negotiating any sort of real political solution. The regime understands that free and fair elections, as opposed to the facade sham elections that were held recently, the regime knows that free and fair elections it would lose. No regime of this sort is going to, as it were, collaborate in its own demise. So this is a regime which is simply has one recipe: killing, intimidating, torturing, including torturing children. This is the sort of regime the world has to deal with. And now the world really has to choose if it sits on its hands or it does something effective. And the emphasis is on the word effective, not sending monitors who are going to be utterly ineffectual.
Brigadier General, you talked earlier about the need for some sort of international involvement here. What do you think what form do you think that international involvement should take? Should it include some sort of military action?
Yes, I will come to that, but let me first comment on that your guest from London, what he has said. First of all, I disagree 100% with everything he said. His logic is completely reflect the logic of the Syrian regime in its media and in its media. Let's go point by point. First of all, he's talking about arming the opposition, that some party from outside Syria and sending weapons. The regime has an arsenal of heavy weapons, tanks, artillery, armed vehicles, airplanes, helicopters, and everything, and hundreds of thousands of soldiers working for this regime, while this freedom fighter has nothing. And on top of that, Russia is continuing sending all kinds of weapons to the regime. Iran is sending weapons, ammunition, experts, fighters, everything to that regime. And then somebody talk about that this is a problem because there is some outside governments is helping the opposition. This is one. He's talking about the guarantees. This is the stupid thing the regime came out with, that they need a guarantees from the opposition, from the freedom fighters, while they control all Syria, all the highways, all the strategic places, and they need guarantees from these people who are fighting an equal fight. Now he's talking about the referendum and about the parliamentary elections. When I was in Syria, when there were no unrest, no chaos, no nothing, I know from my very close reliable sources from the Ministry of Interior that the parliamentary election, usually the people who participate, who vote, like between 12 to 13% in that peaceful time. And now, where there is most of, like, over half of Syria is a war zone, and there is no way to do anything. And he is counting about the numbers of the Ministry of Interior that over half, this is a big lie. I don't think that Mr. Ammar, I believe his name, had said that because he has misinformation. It's purposely, he reflects the logic of this regime. He's talking about the time whenever there is an initiative from the Arabic League or from the United Nations, there will be like a massacre. Yes, who did that? Let us take yesterday only. A town, a very small town near Homs, was demonstrating against the regime. And then immediately after that, for 10 hours, this town was bombing, shelling by artillery from outside. Who has artillery? These gangs, he said. There is no gangs in Syria. There is no Salafists in Syria. There is no Qaeda in Syria. There is no terrorists in Syria. All these groups only existed in the regime forces itself. When you shell a town and kill 106, this is the final numbers till now, we don't know, and over 400 people injured. When you shell this town and kill all these people, this is the act of the gangs.
I want to get to Alan George's view again, if I may, and ask him, should the UN, you talked earlier about how useless, in your view, this ceasefire plan was panning out on the ground. Do you think they should just pack up and leave then? And if that's the case, what happens next?
Well, what the UN should do is up to the UN. I mean, at the moment, they're simply ineffectual. They're not. The observers are not having any meaningful impact on the situation. The regime is not interested in a negotiated peace, whether mediated through the UN or any other quarter. At the same time, from the regime's point of view, there's no strong motivation, quite apart from the matter of its own survival. I mean, there's no outside pressure. The regime looks around the world, it sees that it's protected by Russia in the UN Security Council, protected by China in the same area, and that the West, broadly speaking, is reluctant to intervene militarily.
But short of military action, what else can the international community do here?
Hang on. Key army and intelligence units within Syria remain loyal, so the regime continues to feel confident, I think, that it can somehow prevail. Now, there are many things the international community could do, short of the Security Council. Qatar and Saudi Arabia have publicly said that they're providing the opposition with money and weaponry. Now, other countries might start doing the same and helping the freedom fighters, as I don't hesitate to call them. It's not a matter of a massive external invasion or nothing. There are many types of intervention, covert as well. So there is some real action that the international community could take, and presently simply is not. Presently, it suits the world community to sit on their hands and to use the Kofi Annan, in inverted commas, peace plan as a fig leaf for doing nothing.
What's your view on that, Ammar Waqaf? Is the UN hurting or helping the situation here?
Well, I think Mr. George is viewing what is happening and the reaction of the United Nations as a passive gesture, really. I think they're pretty much reluctant to repeat the same mistake that they've done in Libya. No matter how much people fell down in Syria so far in the past 14 months, I can assure you that a lot more would fall should any international intervention seek to go in there by force, really. But I would like to go back, because there were a lot of accusations against me that General Hashim made. Actually, the Annan peace plan says specifically that commitments are to be sought by the opposition and all relevant parties. It's not the regime who's asking for commitments, it's the peace plan itself. The second issue, to say that Al-Qaeda is not there, that armed groups are not there, and against all the evidence that we have on the ground, is really unrealistic. The Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the UN, yesterday said specifically that the work of the explosions in Aleppo and in Damascus were done. He came short of saying it was Al-Qaeda, but actually Al-Qaeda issued, or Jabhat al-Nusra issued, a video detailing exactly what, claiming responsibility and detailing exactly who did what and when.
What evidence do you see? Sorry, let me. I just want to ask you this one question as well. What evidence do you see that the Syrian government is committed to this plan?
Well, the Syrian government logically. Okay, I'll answer your question and come back to continue. The Syrian government logically. Yes, the Syrian government logically has this plan as an international framework within which they can solve the problem, and at the same time gain the acceptance and the consent of the international community, which would facilitate and hasten afterwards the reintegration of the Syrian government and Syria into the international world. So for them, this is actually a golden opportunity. The international world saying, oh, we're going to have a Syrian-led plan, we're going to have a Syrian-led peace plan, and so on and so forth. And that recognizes the Syrian government. So for them, it's really a golden opportunity. But going back to the issue, the Brigadier General did say actually that somebody is arming the opposition. And again, arming the opposition is against the peace plan. Saying that Russia is arming Syria against NATO. They've provided them with Yakhund missiles. There are anti-marine vessel ultrasound missiles. They're not to bomb Al-Houla or Homs or something. But again, with regards to the massacre that happened with Houla, obviously, 100 people or so being, getting, killed isn't the fancy thing to smile about on screen. But actually, we should hold our horses in accusing the Syrian government, because a lot of what happened before has actually turned out to be the work of the armed groups, only to steer the international community against the Syrian government. And we need to remember that very well. And I've given you the example of February the 4th and the 5th, where according to Sky News, for example, I'm here in England, Sky News said up to 350 people were killed, and apparently only 40 bodies floated the next day.
I want to turn back to Brigadier General Hashim and get his view on some of what you've just heard.
Actually, it is the military intervention. This is the only thing will stop the massacre in Syria. To say that there is no massacres in Syria or there is some other parties doing that, I cannot believe that a decent person like your guest from London would say or repeat these lies over and over and over again. Why these?
All right,
not me.
Let me just jump in here for a moment.
No.
We've exhausted this discussion on what exactly happened in Houla, but I just want to turn to the question of military action. Are you not concerned that would perhaps make things worse and open up sectarian differences, ethnic differences inside the country and spark a wider regional conflict?
Actually, the opposite completely, 100% the opposite. And now we would have, or maybe expect to have, some consequences because they delayed this intervention. If this intervention happened like 4 or 5 months ago, everything will be more all right. And these worries or consequences that the Western countries or the international community is afraid of if intervention happened in Syria, that like civil unrest or civil war or sectarian clashing or something like that, everything they are worried of is going to grow bigger and bigger.
Brigadier General, we are unfortunately going to have to leave it there. We are out of time, but I want to thank all three of our guests: Aqil Hashim in Philadelphia, Alan George in Barcelona, and Ahmad Waqaf in London. Good to get your thoughts. We also want to thank you for watching On the Hour, round the clock. Al Jazeera's coverage of the situation in Syria continues. We also have background and analysis on our website, aljazeera.com. And there too, you can watch this program again if you want. That's it from me and the team. We'll see you next week when we have another look inside Syria. Bye for now.